Hi and namaste. I'm just popping on this video to talk about Soul Center's latest podcast coming out this week. And we encourage you to listen and to learn and to meditate upon these ideas. This week, we're going to be talking about this idea of being defeated. And during our lives, especially the afternoon of life, we all have moments of defeat, right? Some of us have years of feeling absolutely defeated. And the idea of defeat, our ego likes to tell us that the idea of defeat is that we're absolutely losers and in the muck and the mud, and we're never going to get out of it. And so when we are feeling defeated, we often have old beliefs that arise that remind us that we are not successful, that we'll never make it, that we'll never get out of this. And so the challenge and the invitation with feeling defeated is to rise in it. When you're in the mud and the muck, the challenge is to rise within it. And how do we do that? There's some different ways that we're going to discuss on our podcast as to how to do that. But one of the biggest ways, and of course we all know Brene Brown, her key phrase is vulnerability. And one of the ways to survive and to make it through a defeat in our different times of life is to feel and to be vulnerable. Ultimately, when we are in the mud and the muck of life, when we feel embarrassed, when we feel like we just can't get out of it, and we really actually don't want anyone to know what we're going through, the challenge to all of us is to be vulnerable with where we are. Parker Palmer talks about this idea of vulnerability. And when we are vulnerable and we admit where we are and how we feel and really sit through our emotions of vulnerability and feeling defeated, we can then gather in a community of souls. Right? We're not supposed to do this work alone. We're not supposed to go through this life alone. And when we feel most alone is usually when we are in our darkest shadow of time. And Parker Palmer talks about this idea of gathering in souls that have been where you have been, that have been able to rise above, or that are also in it with you. And this is the most important thing. Another big step that we're going to talk about on our podcast is to feel yourself through the mud and the muck of defeat, is to build a resilient soul so that you can handle what life throws to you. We're also going to talk about our experience, Baruch and my experience through our own defeated times of life. Especially, we're going to focus on the 3 years that we lived in Israel, which were 3 truly amazing years, but definitely the hardest 3 years of our lives. And we're going to talk about the struggle that we both went through personally, professionally, and within our family, and how when we stayed with the pain of all that we went through, we actually made it through slowly, to feel more resilient, to actually feel like adults. Really, that is what it means to be vulnerable, and what it means to go through the pain of defeat is to come out on the other side and feel like you have been through the battle, but that you are an adult and that you know yourself and that you are more sure of yourself. So I'll invite you to listen to our podcast, to tune in, to check out our website, and to listen every week to different ideas of what it means to live in the afternoon of life. The afternoon of life is simply this idea that at some point, most of us when we're in our 40s and beyond, but some of us go through it before, we are brought to our knees by the stuff of life. Either it's a divorce, a loss, a grief, a change in career, something that brings us to our knees. And for a lot of us, I know for women, a lot of it is hormonal changes, it's family changes, it's life changes, it's children getting older, it's raising teenagers, raising kids in college, and all the stuff of life that we can no longer push under the rug. And so we invite you weekly to discuss this with us, to explore with us how to have a resilient heart, how to use your wise soul to go deeper than you ever thought you could. So I bless all of us to find our resilient soul and to join us on our podcast. And namaste.